Liverpool Live with Mick Coyle. Rock, sport and talk.
Radio City Talk.
We've got Jay McKenna in the studio and Joe Blott, both from the Spirit of Shankly organisation. Gents, thank you for your time. Thanks for coming in today. Mental health is very much on the agenda for a number of different reasons. What with it being World Mental Health Day on Wednesday. And Jay, you and I have spoken about your own mental health in the past as well. And is it fair to say that you're aware as much as anybody that actually the match-going fella in particular is often a difficult sort of section of society to target when it comes to getting the right messages out there in regard to mental health?
I think it is because, one of the problems we know exists is that men don't talk about it and men suffer from this and it's almost hidden. And football, rightly or wrongly in my opinion, is seen as macho. And, the players are always having this thing of toughen up and, man up kind of thing. Fans go there and, it's almost tribal, isn't it? And you've got to, be on display and, shouting and screaming for your team. And I think it's just also an environment in which you actually go and just do something fun. You actually go and enjoy yourself. So, I've mentioned this and I know Dave down here has when he's talked about things, the match is probably a bit of an outlet for you, really. It's 90 minutes where you're not thinking about, whatever's in your mind. It does distract you really nice. It's when you come home after it. And I think, it's problematic in that sense because it's not always easy to spot signs or get people to talk about it. But equally, it presents an opportunity. It's a time when you are around, usually, men, mates, and you can talk about it. You have lots of chats, no doubt, about whether it should be, Trent Alexander-Arnold or Joe Gomez playing right back, or whether Man City, did or didn't deserve a pen. You'd have all them conversations, and there's probably a space and time, only a few minutes, where you can just have that opportunity at half-time or before the game, having a pint to say to someone, how you feeling? Are you okay, kind of thing? And I think it presents us that opportunity, which, some of the stuff you'll touch on is what we've tried to do at Spirit of Shankly and that others are doing with us, to use it as a catalyst for positive change.
Absolutely. I think the answers to those two questions are, they thought Leroy Sané was playing, and yes. Yeah. Let's bring Joe into the conversation. Joe Blott. Joe, thank you for coming in as well. Liverpool fans who subscribe to LFC TV will be able to see a documentary later on this week, which is
not just those who subscribe. It's going to be free for everybody.
To everybody. Sorry. Brilliant stuff. The club are. Liverpool Football Club, they're not a mental health organisation, but they have almost a duty of care, if you like, to sort of to do things like this. So it's brilliant that actually this documentary is going to be going out later on this week, which will look at the issue of mental health, but frame it within a footballing context. And I sometimes think, Joe, that it's okay to trick people into watching something about mental health, because actually in going, this is about mental health, but it's okay because it's football, people will then realise that this is actually... It's about everything. It's about themselves. It's about their mates. It's about their dads, their brothers, their mums, male or female, which is why this is such a commendable programme that's been put together.
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, it's brilliantly put together as well. And I think when we began the conversations with the club and then LFC TV, clearly they were looking at it from purely a football perspective, really, and a footballer perspective. Clearly it tells the story of Jason McAteer, the troubles that he's been through. He wants to share those experiences, and that's fantastic to do that. I think the conversations we were having was how do you broaden that out to say there's kind of a level playing field here. It can happen to anybody, as you've just been discussing. How can we get a fan experience? How can we get a broader experience? World Mental Health Day plays a big part in that, really, because this year's theme is the impact of modern world on young people. So you think about the academy now and the young people and what's happening there. There's young kids being picked up at 7, 8 and 9, staying with the club for a good few years, going through their young teenage years, and then maybe being rejected, maybe being supported all the way through that. So you're right, that duty of care that the club has, they've really, really gone to town on that and making sure that young people have that follow through and support all the way through. And they've got counsellors, they've got support, they've got therapists, they're linked into the CAMS network, etc. Beyond that, it's been what does the fan take of this? And as Jay's just been alluded to, we've got 54,000 people turn up, hopefully for a well-being experience at a match on a Saturday or whenever it's played. But at the same time, there's 7 days in between where life struggles get there. So how do we support that? And that's where, talking to your mates, having your mates. But I think the real powerful bit is about the impact of mental health and mental well-being. And clearly, this, the film, the documentary, I think draws attention to not just the footballing aspect, but just how the impact can be felt. And that's where we see that the fan story come through in terms of the impact being, unfortunately, with the tragic loss of life, and the impact that has on a family, the impact that has on a football community. And all credit to Liverpool Football Club for taking that responsibility as well, in terms of not only their employment responsibility, but their social responsibilities as well.
I guess as well, that football fans, of a certain mindset go into a game, great because you're there to go and enjoy a game, or do the as Jay said, the stand up and beat your chest and so on and so forth. But I think it's really wrong to assume that football fans don't have the capacity to understand this stuff. When football fans have the capacity to understand that a player's not making, tracking runs because his fourth metatarsal got broken, it was only 8 weeks from his operation and it's a 10-week recovery period. Football fans have that knowledge already, and yet the idea that you would then turn to your mate and go, and how are you feeling today? But how are you really feeling? Yeah. They're not going to want to do it. They can do that. We've got the capacity to do it.
We can, and I think that's the message we're trying to get out here. It is raising awareness here, and I know there's a big conversation about, well, when you've asked that first question and your mate says, well, I'm actually not feeling too good today, what's your next point? Well, that's where we're trying to say is, well, actually, it's a conversation now, because your mate will actually appreciate perhaps having a conversation, a chance to talk, an opportunity just to vent their feelings, just to say, can you just keep in touch with me during the week? Can I ring you when I'm feeling a bit low? Not to solve. There's professional organisations there to solve, and we can direct people. That's what the film does at the end. Clearly gives in its credit, who people can contact. I think that conversation bit is about exploring and preventing. And we've seen the figures, haven't we? 64 young men take their lives every week. You extrapolate that to a football stadium. That means that in 14 years' time, Anfield will be empty. That's just phenomenal to think that society kind of allows that to happen. And if we can make any impact through football fans, who really are sort of right across the spectrum of the social stratosphere of the country, then I think that's the message we're trying to give out. Yeah,
there is some sort of mind blowing sort of ways of thinking about. Often the one that always strikes me is Jay, that idea that of all the things that you might face in your life, the thing that's most likely to kill you is yourself. Yeah, as a man. Between that particular age bracket, particularly 25 to 44, you are the biggest threat to yourself, which is a frightening thing to think about, really. But football can be a part of it. Football can be that connection, can't it?
Yeah, it's the commonality between people, isn't it? And it's what will bind you, so it gives you reason to talk to others and stuff like that. But in the documentary, and it is worth watching, and it is a hard watch in part. It talks about Neil Hughes, a Liverpool supporter who killed himself, and you see firsthand the impact it has on his dad and one of his mates who saw him. But you can see within that, that they weren't aware, they didn't know, and you see the hurt that they feel. Because they wanted to have been there. And I think, if we can help, that someone might be able to say, what, I can speak to my mum and dad, and I can ask a mate, or I can ring an organisation, or I can contact someone and say, you've wrote about this, can you tell me what I need to do to go and speak to someone? If this documentary just helps one person like that, and means that they maybe reconsider whether, taking their life is what they want to do or feel they need to do, then it's certainly worthwhile. But even if it just gets us talking just about how you feel. Mental health isn't just about suicide. It is just about how you feel and how you're coping. If we can get to a place where people just feel, it's automatic that, as well as asking who's playing, that, when you ask a mate, and I've said this when we done the mental health marathon on here, and I think it's one of the themes within mental health first aid, isn't it? Is ask twice. You say to someone how you feel, oh, I'm okay. Ask again, are you really okay? If you know they're not, if you know they're quite unusual, being quiet, ask about work, ask about family, ask something else, follow it up to make sure that they know you're there, and just try and see. And it might be that they just never will. Some people just never will open up, but the person will know they're there, that you're willing and wanting to talk to them about it. And I think one of the themes that comes through in the documentary is that that feeling of people wanting direction, wanting support. They want something they know inside themselves. Jason McAteer talks about this. And, my experience was, I was watching it and I was thinking, so many similarities there. I was like, you always doubt yourself, even after your experience of it, you always doubt yourself. I was thinking, oh my God, no, these are just similarities across people within this. They're just wanting someone to help them, but they just can't articulate what they want them to help them with and why. So having someone who's willing to just help you pry open that box might just be a good thing. And I think, the documentary does that. And, the idea that we're having World Mental Health Day and that we're having conversations like this might just mean someone who's listening to this just thinks, oh no, I should talk to someone. And if it helps bit by bit like that, then, it slows down that rate of death that you and Joe mentioned.
We got Jay McKenna and Joe Blott from Spirit of Shankly on the show. They're working alongside the World Mental Health Day, which is coming up on Wednesday, alongside the Liverpool Mental Health Festival, which is ongoing as well. And they've also keen to sort of promote the issue of mental health and well-being among football fans in the light of a documentary which is set to appear on LFC TV on Wednesday. I'm sure there'll be plenty of repeats of it as well. Joe, let me get this right. So the documentary, the headline act, if you like, is Jason McAteer, who, as part of his autobiography, talked about mental health concerns that he had and issues that he faced within the game as well. You don't have to look too far outside of the LFC family, even outside of the dressing room, to find that there are many other players who've had similar types of experiences to Jason McAteer, and that's included within the documentary.
It is, yeah. There's reference to that in terms of former Liverpool players. So Chris Kirkland speaks really powerfully about his experience of that. But clearly, we've had in the recent past, there've been a number of footballers, haven't there been a number of high-profile celebrities as well, who've actually begun to voice their own experience of mental well-being and their ill health that they've suffered as a consequence of where they've been in their life. I think it's that opportunity that people have come out. I think mental health, for many, many years has had a stigma attached to it now. And I think what we're trying to do is peel the paper back on that and say it's actually okay to recognise that you're having these low times, and there's people there who can help, and hopefully it's your friends who can help, it's the organisation who can help. You were referring to before about the way that Liverpool are taking mental health seriously within their organisation and now broader. That's something that I think we see as a massive positive, and I think part of the festival this week really. I can't imagine sort of 10 years ago a mental health festival being so sort of avant-garde in the way that this is. This is about celebrations through film, through drama, through comedy, through ordinary life, that people have suffered mental ill health and mental well-being. But actually, that's okay, it's all right. And the people who are doing it, they're high-profile musicians. They are people who you'd expect, but they can't have mental health problems because they have a sort of a privileged, in inverted commas, life. So they should be okay, shouldn't they? But it's not. It covers everybody.
Well, you mentioned Chris Kirkland, who was kind enough to appear on the programme. That podcast, by the way, I think is still available, Mental Health Monday, if you want to search for that one. Stan Collymore came on as well. Now, Stan Collymore, people forget how good Stan Collymore was as a footballer, and Liverpool paid was it a world record fee at the time, $8.5 million, British record fee, for a player who had everything.
Yeah.
Everything that you could get in here. But when people would ultimately look back, and outside of a couple of games, Newcastle being one of them, would kind of go, well, what really happened there? What was the point in all that? You then speak to Stan Collymore, and then you go, all right, that now makes sense.
Yeah.
He had problems through Liverpool. He moved to Aston Villa thinking, I'll go home, that'll be easier. Mm-hmm. Then had issues with the manager at the time, to the point where he's saying, you need to get me out of this team. I can't play football anymore. And he's got the senior pros giving him, dogs abuse, because who do you think you are? You've been one of these Spice Boys. Now you think this, that, and the other. The manager's calling him out in the press. Gareth Southgate, I think, was one of the senior players at the time. And he's going, what are you doing? And Stan Collymore, he said on the programme, he said to me, I spoke to Gareth Southgate years later. Gareth Southgate said, if I knew then what I know now, of course we would have dealt with that situation completely differently. For him, it was him and Hugo Ehiogu and Andy Townsend all sort of going, right, we're going to get this lad to pull himself together a little bit. And actually, you look at that and you think, well, actually, that can replicate itself right across all kinds of sports, and then transfer itself into your own workplace. Where the lad who used to always be in the pub, he's not here anymore. He used to always be one of the first on, the team sheet when you'd be playing five-a-side. He doesn't come anymore. Yeah. And those sorts of things you can spot. And I think some people are really learning the lessons and other people aren't. I was really warmed when I saw Brighton and Hove Albion. I'd done an interview with Anthony Knockhart, and he talked about situation he had within his family. And he spoke to Chris Hughton. Chris Hughton said, as the manager of Brighton and Hove Albion, you don't have a choice on this. We're going to get you some help.
Yeah.
And I thought, what a great attitude that is.
Yeah. You've moved that decision for the person, and you're just going to make sure they get the support.
You've gone, that's not a problem. I've got the solution for you, and I'm gonna, guide you to that solution as well. Jay, from a union point of view on this one as well, these are employees as well, and employers, and there is a duty of care for employers. If it was a building site, you'd say make sure you're wearing a hard hat. But would you ever say, did you have suicidal thoughts before you came into work this morning?
Yeah, and I think what we've got to try and do is normalise that discussion, not just amongst mates, but in workplaces. That if I walked in with a limp, they would ask me, is everything okay? If I, fell and broke my leg, they wouldn't assume that, I was weaker than the person who fell and didn't break the leg. So why would we assume, there's a problem with someone if they're experiencing mental ill health and somebody else isn't? So I think we've got to normalise that. And I think if we can get to a point where the idea of just talking about how you feel, whether that's good and bad, we get to a place where it's easier to talk about being bad because you talk about being good. Most people, myself in my experience, I always thought I felt good, and then I felt not good. But there was no place to go and talk about how I feel because there was no place to ever talk about how I felt before this. So how do we do that? And one of the things that's again in the documentary is really good. The club have a psychologist that talks to players, and I think and this is where football has got the power for change. We will look in our workplace and say, why would we need one of them? Because I just do this job. And then it's like, well, a footballer has it. Oh, well, if a footballer has it, it's good enough for them. It's good enough for us, isn't it? People follow diets because athletes now follow these diets. Like, well, if it's good enough for him, it's good enough for me. And now, if X player, can go and sit in a room in Melwood and just talk about how they're feeling and that they've got these stresses at home. Well, maybe them stresses at home that I've got, that won't go away, maybe need talking about. And I think if we can get to that point, it normalise it. Obviously, the big elephant in the room on this is funding and support, but not all of this needs, psychologists and counsellors in workplaces. It just needs people to be signposted to the right place, but also just an environment that someone thinks, if I'm not feeling myself and it's affecting how I do my job, it's affecting how I feel when I just come to work, we need to talk about it. It is a workplace issue then, because otherwise what happens is the person comes in and they're a bit quieter. They're not as chatty as normal. Oh, isn't he a grump? That kind of language becomes, he's a grump, and the person goes within themselves. They don't want to talk. People think they're just grouchy and that they're miserable. Well, they're just like that. They don't really talk. They don't really socialise. And they become the problem instead of us dealing with the problem, which isn't the person. It's just something they're experiencing. And I think if we can get to that point where we normalise how we are and how we feel about things, we might also just be a bit more considerate that, you see lots of this, don't you? People saying to, Janet, usually around women, you say, oh, smile, love. It's like, no, don't. You don't need to say that. Have a thought about why the person might be feeling the way they do, or that they just don't smile. But if that's someone in the workplace, go and talk to them. Go and ask them, is everything okay? It might just be that they've just had a bad day. Maybe they had no sleep, the kids were up all night kind of thing. Or it might be that they're experiencing a problem and they just need someone to talk. But passing off a glib comment or making an assumption of them isn't going to work. So, we spend most of our time at work. We are in work for a significant portion of our lives. We should use that time to make sure that people's well-being is good. It shouldn't just be a thing you have to talk about at the match on a Saturday, or when you're going to your family. Yeah,
and I think just about. Just in terms of the Spirit of Shankly, its union responsibilities. Clearly, our members aren't our employees, so it's a very different sort of engagement that we have. The thing that binds us together, the Spirit of Shankly, Liverpool Football Club, and our membership is football. And that's what we were thinking about. Well, how do we join that together? What is it that is so important to us that we can do something about this in terms of campaigning? And we just felt that there was a social responsibility that we had as a union, as a mature union, to work with the club. We do a lot of lobbying on behalf of our members in terms of sometimes unfortunate negative ways with the club, but actually there's positive ways of working as well. And I think that's what we've got here. We've got a positive outcome. By working together, by us joining up with Liverpool Mental Health Consortium, working through Liverpool Public Health in terms of the work that they've done, Paul's place, Beacon Counselling, we kind of got ourselves really heavily involved in sort of what is it that we can do. Worked with the club through that, and out of that came the documentary. That if that can change and people's lives, and if it can, just give that, as Jay said, that opportunity for people to say, I'm going to think about this. I'm going to do something about it. I think that's a really strong positive. That's what unions do as well as their workplace. They do it on behalf of their membership.
Yeah. And I guess as well, that if people get the chance to see the documentary, and it'll be it's Wednesday evening, but then I guess it'll be available to see.
Yeah, it's
other times.
It's on.
Well.
It's going to be released tomorrow morning on YouTube. So there'll be a link. Liverpool will be putting that out. I think from around 9ish. I think is our expectation in the morning. But those who just want to sit down and watch it can sit down and watch LFC TV tomorrow night. It'll be on free at 9 o'clock for people to watch. And then obviously you'd see lots of people sharing it. We'll be sharing it, as will many more. Across social media, but just taking that opportunity to sit and watch it, it's a worthwhile watch. That even if you aren't experiencing it, that it's just good to know what others are going through. I think it tells that story really well. For
people who do see it and then respond, and it doesn't have to be this sort of light shines upon them and they right, now it all makes sense, but that response, which is a more likely response of I feel a bit like that. In terms of the work that you're doing now through Spirit of Shankly, the connections that you're making, what sort of things would you then be saying to a member if they came to you and said, you know what, Joe, I did watch that documentary, like you said, and I feel a bit like that. What should I do next?
Well, Joe, to his credit, and I think the absolute credit to all the staff at LFC and the channel as well who've pulled this together, because they've done some fantastic work. We've had this conversation, haven't we, Joe, about making sure people are signposted to the right place. We'll be sharing information and around just how you have that conversation with your mates, organisations you can go to. We know there's the national ones, the documentary, signpost to them. And I think that's the point of this documentary, is it's to raise awareness and act as an anchor to getting people thinking about it, and then following it up with the work from the Mental Health Festival and the Mental Health Consortium within Liverpool around, here's who you can go to, here's who you can go and get advice from. And, I think Liverpool are going to be putting some information out there saying to people, here's where you can go next. And I think, there's a fear sometimes that, well, if we get everyone thinking and talking about it, can we send them to the right place? And you know what? Who knows? This could produce thousands of people, and they might not all get the help, as quick as we'd like. It could produce 2 or 3, and they will get the help as quick as we'd like. But in having this conversation, we start that process, again, because I don't think it is just a one thing. You have done it with the mental health work you do. For different people, it just triggers at a time. They'll just know, oh no, now's the time to go to someone. And it'll signpost them to the right places, because I think this is the other thing within mental health, and even within the documentary, we don't have to be experts about this. We just need to be able to know and recognise when something isn't right. We don't need to know what that something is. We just need to send people to the right place, or make sure they get the right support to figure out what that is. And it might be something really serious, and it could be something within your life is somewhat relatively innocuous, but you get that opportunity to start talking about it and remove it from your head. It's the big experience I found. Removing it from your head and putting it out there. Jason McAteer talks about this as the wood, isn't it? When they say it out loud, it's like this moment when they say it out loud to someone, when they know in their mind and then they say it out loud to someone, there is almost this sense of like, a release. It's out there now, it's real, but now I can begin to deal with it. And I think, this is the starting point, I think, in some people's cases for doing that. Yeah,
I mean, Neil's dad makes a really powerful point when he's interviewed us, and he said if this can help one person to draw back from any really serious harm to themselves, then he's really proud of that. That there's a legacy there for what his son has been through. I think the spin for that's absolutely right. But I think it's about, we want the rest of the fans who may not be at this moment in time suffering any ill health, but actually to be there for their mates.
Yeah.
And that's the other bit. So yeah, we could draw out an unknown number of people out of a Pandora's box that come forward. But actually we want the positive Pandora's box that says that, I can do something. I can look out for my mate because I recognise that he hasn't been to the last 2 home games. I wonder where he is. I'll just give him a call. And 99 times out of 100, we hope that as we speak, well, I'm on my holidays. But it's having that question, that conversation, that we know that, as I say, that the well-being is going to match. It's a good experience, hopefully, for all of us when we get there, whichever football team you follow. For some people, though, there's a void after that. We can fill that void.
And I think that's the other thing, that for people who might go, no, this doesn't affect me, I'm sound. It might affect you in the future, but also it might be that you're the person who gets told. It might be that your mates are the ones who put their faith in you to open up about their thing. And then it's about knowing yourself then. What are you going to say in that regard? So you might think, I don't need to worry about all this stuff. I'm sound. I'm not worried about anything. It might be tomorrow morning that your mate knocks on your door and goes, I need to talk to somebody about this.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other thing that we need to bear in mind, that although you've got to consider your own mental health, you've also got to consider those around you. Because if you don't, you might find yourself in that conversation anyway.
Yeah. And it's that thing, it's making sure you're equipped to do that. If your mate came to you and his arm was bent the other way, you would say, I think you need help, mate. And you wouldn't be sitting there thinking to yourself, oh, well, I don't need to worry about broken arms because I don't need to know where that nearest hospital is to send them to it because I haven't broke my arm. But if your mate comes to you and had that problem, you'd be like, well, you need to go to the hospital, mate. You definitely need to go and see someone because there's clearly a thing there. You'd know what to do. And lots of us, until maybe recent times, wouldn't have known what to do. Wouldn't have known to just say to someone, well, just tell me first. Tell me how you're feeling, and then we'll figure out what you need to do next. None of us would know that because we would be wondering, well, where do I send them to? Well, you can Google it now. There's lots of organisations you can just call. You can call on your mate's behalf. And I think it's getting it in, that, as you say, they're normalising it to people that they say, well, if this happens, I roughly know what I need to do. You don't need to be a trained first aider to know that if someone was bleeding, you need to try and stop the bleed. Is there a thing here where we get to a point where people just go, well, yeah, I reckon if now someone come to me, I think I could give them a good first go of helping them. Yeah,
and if people don't know what that sounds like, the Samaritans number always helps. It's 116123, I think, off the top of my head. If you want to find mental health services in your local area, go to hubofhope.co.uk and then type in your postcode or use location on your phone. That'll bring up all the mental health services in your local area, and it'll also tell you what they do and what they're about, be it Beacon, be it about Talk Liverpool, be it James's place, 1,001 different places, Paul's place, 1,001 different things. That's hubofhope.co.uk. Also, take them down to their local GP. And get that conversation going with the GP, because obviously that then puts you within the NHS system as well.
And also, practical, the thing I found a way to try and get help was I had read other people's stories. So, go back to them. And I've had people after my story, how do I get in touch with Compass? What's their address? Have you got it? Be ready to share that, find people's stories. If people feel like they need to tomorrow, they watch this programme, tweet or DM Spirit of Shankly, tweet or DM me or Joe. We'll happily take the time, to send a message. Because sometimes it's that. They don't want to ask them, mate, because they're not sure what it is. Ask someone who's been through it then. Ask them if they can just say, I read your story, can you tell me where you went? And okay, signpost you. It's a really simple thing, because the people who've been through this will be the first to say, if anyone has a problem, I'll make sure I can tell you where you need to go. I'll make sure I signpost you to the right place, because you know what it's like to be in their shoes. So, there's lots of people they can reach out to in ways they can reach out, and I think it's just saying to people, find the way that works for you and take that first step. Once that first step's taken, it's a hell of a lot different, but it's getting people ready to take that first step.
It might save lives, Joe. It'll certainly improve lives for a lot of people as well, which is why I guess it's something you're proud to be part of, both in terms of the documentary and the previews that you've seen of that, the work that's gone into that, but also the work through the Mental Health Festival going into World Mental Health Day. Yeah,
I mean, that's what I was trying to articulate earlier, really, that improvements in people's well-being to make people actually enjoy the life that they've got, which is only once, is really important. And I think there's very, very many different ways that they can do that. The festivals, I think the festival's a great idea in terms of doing it. We saw it also as well earlier this year with Mental Health Pride Day. In terms of the activities that go on, that kind of normalises being not normal. And I think that's what we're trying to break down, any of those stigmas, any of those barriers, quite clearly. If we can support it, anything that says that improves the well-being of an individual or groups of people, then yeah, I'm immensely proud that Spirit of Shankly being involved in that. And if we've gone some way to do that, then I'm really pleased, and sure the rest of the committee members will be too.
Joe, Jay, thank you for your time. Thank you both for joining us on the programme. So the documentary that LFC TV have been working on, it's Phil Reed who I think
Phil Reed
is
and
a lot
others,
of the
yeah.
credit
Peter,
for
I
it
think,
as well.
and Mark Platt and stuff like that. Really good stuff, yeah.
That's going to be
Paul, sorry, that's
right
Paul,
across social media. You got to get everybody's name in. Right across
Peter and Paul, I'm mistaken in there, the Paul lads.
social media, both tomorrow morning and through the course of the day as well. LFC TV, that's tomorrow night as well, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of repeats of it as well. Thank you both for your time. Really appreciate your time on that one as well. I spoke actually with Claire Stevens from the Liverpool Mental Health Consortium and the person behind the festival as well. That's going to be included in our Mental Health Extra programming as well, and podcast as well. We've got loads of mental health stuff to do this week, with it being World Mental Health Day coming up tomorrow, Wednesday, and we'll have more details on the way very soon here on Radio City Talk.
Liverpool Live with Mick Coyle.
Rock, sport and talk for Liverpool.
Radio City Talk.
And it's Radio City Talk, Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick Coyle. Got an email from an organisation based here in Liverpool, which we're going to talk about now and actually speak to a representative. Talk Liverpool. They are a free NHS service offering psychological therapies to adults aged 16 plus registered with Liverpool, within Liverpool, who are feeling depressed or anxious. We've got a consultant clinical psychologist in the studio, Paul Campbell. Paul, it's great to see you. Thank you for the email and for the team getting across. I'd love to get you on, which is why we're spending some time with you now. First and foremost, Talk Liverpool. Can you tell us about the idea behind it?
Yes, Talk Liverpool is an NHS-funded service, and the main aim of it is to provide talking therapies to people who are suffering from depression or some of the more common anxiety disorders. As I say, it's fully funded by the NHS. It's free. It's available in the communities and in various venues across Liverpool. And one of the main things we're trying to do is for people to get in touch with us before things get too serious. So people don't need to wait until they're very depressed or very anxious. If they just contact us at the first signs of these things, then there's lots we can do that isn't necessarily formal long-term therapy, but there's lots of different levels of support we can provide to people.
Often on the programme we talk about people who reach crisis point, where they suddenly then find themselves on a waiting list. Then they might have to wait 6 weeks, 6 months, a year sometimes for the right services. When I was speaking to, excuse the name drop, Jeremy Corbyn the other week, he mentioned talking therapies as something that he was keen to see operate more widely, simply because it's about early intervention. So what's the availability then? How does the system work?
Yeah, well, when people phone us for help, and that's the best way to get in touch with us, is to phone us directly rather than having to go through your GP or anyone like that. We're able to give them an appointment within a day or two. And that's over the telephone, just to make sure that we're the right people for them, and to give them a bit of space to talk about what problems they've been having. So that usually happens within a few days. One of our therapists will call them, and then we've lots and lots of different levels of therapy available. And the best way to start, if someone is sort of anxious or depressed, is we could start them off. We're starting to run things called Skills for Wellbeing courses, and that's to help people develop the skills to manage their mood. The problem with depression and anxiety is some of the things that feel most natural to people in coping with these problems are actually the things that keep the problems going. So, for example, someone who's feeling down or depressed usually locks themselves away, doesn't want to be around other people, and then feels even more miserable for it, and has something else to beat themselves up about.
In terms of having those conversations, breaking those cycles, is part of it just that they're having the conversation, that somebody has reached out to them, that they've had that conversation, and that they feel like they're not being ignored, that there is a conversation to be had and an opportunity for them in the future? Yeah.
But one of the things we really want to avoid with people who are depressed is them losing hope. And providing them with some sort of hope that this is fixable. Also, it's extremely common. As we know, one in 4 people suffer from anxiety or depression at any time. And offering people hope and opening up that conversation just for them to realise that this is something that's very common, happens to a lot of people. It doesn't mean anything about them as a person. But they're very simple steps that they can use themselves to help pull themselves out of it in the early days. And
that's something that you will guide them through as part of the interactions that you have with them.
Yeah. We've lots of different ways in which we do that. A thing called guided self-help is probably the best way to start with these things. So they can attend a course where they'll be taught skills and they go off and practice it, just like you would if you went to college to learn about plumbing. We'll teach you about mental health and how to keep your emotional health well. We offer online therapy, so people don't actually have to talk to a therapist. They can be online and use it. They'll still have a therapist, and the therapist will check in with them, but they never actually meet in person. And we also offer talking therapies where they meet up with the therapist. But yeah, it's that conversation of helping people to break the patterns that they get stuck in when they're depressed or anxious.
It strikes me as, although it's just a phone call away, a pretty thorough service, as and when you require. It might be that face-to-face contact, that group sort of work in terms of the courses. It might just be the online thing, but it seems quite flexible in terms of what people might need.
Yeah, the approach that we try to take with people is what's called a least intrusive intervention first approach. So we start them off with something that's not very intensive. It's maybe a course, a skills for wellbeing course, but then. And we help them monitor their symptoms. And if that doesn't work for them, we automatically offer them the next most intensive thing, and they work their way up to. Some people end up in therapy with us for 6 months in weekly therapy with a therapist for an hour a week. But we work them up to that. Most people get better by attending one of our courses or online stuff or some brief help. But if they don't get better, we'll automatically offer them something a bit more intensive. The last thing we want is to lose touch with people, for people to start therapy, get disheartened and not come back, and we tend to try and chase those people up and not let them get away.
That phrase there, you've just used it, most people do get better.
Yeah.
And I guess one of the things that people will think when they're contacting any kind of mental health service, they're thinking, will this work? Yeah. Is this going to work for me? And we're talking about the fact, that this isn't people at crisis point. These are people who are facing different issues in their life at any one time and think maybe I could reach out for them. Yeah. For you to offer that hope, to offer that opportunity that things do get better, and most people who get involved do get better as well. I think we'll make people think, maybe this is something we can take a look at.
Well, what we know, we monitor what we do very, very thoroughly, and we monitor people's symptoms every time that they talk to us. And what we know is that if people stick with the therapy right to the very end, approximately 85% of the people we see fully recover and don't have depression or anxiety at the end of their therapy. When we factor in those people who disengage or don't turn up, or for some reason this isn't the right time for them, that brings it down to about 50%. So that includes people who drop out, people who think, well, I'm actually in the wrong place and I don't want to come anymore. But for those people who stick at the therapy, about 85% of them get better. Can
you tell us about the scale of Talk Liverpool in terms of numbers of people, in terms of the operation that as it works at the moment?
Yeah, we see about 1,000 people a month. It's one of the biggest services there are regionally. About 1,000 people a month come through the doors, or at any one time is having therapy with us. And we're always on the lookout for more. One of the good things about talking therapies at the minute is the government wants us to do more of it, and that's across the political divide. Labour and Tories are asking us to do more talking therapies. So we're always on the lookout for more people. The problem that we have is that people see us as a mental health service or something that's not for them, that's for a certain group of people who are mentally ill, when really we want to dispel that myth. What we like to think of ourselves as an emotional health service, and that if people are feeling slightly down, then by all means come along to us. We're trying to reach out to those more mild problems that people are having. And because what we find is if we get in there early enough, it's a lot easier to treat than waiting until it gets very serious.
Tell us about then how your service links up, because sometimes people might think, well, if I reach out to this because it comes under the mental health bracket, then my employer will find out that I've been having these meetings, or it'll go on my records. And then if, and people get worried about things, don't they? About, if they've particularly got young children, they think, is there a risk of, social services getting involved? But you guys will be absolutely right across the board on this one in terms of the work that you do to making sure that everything that people do say to you stays within those four walls, and that they're getting the right service for their needs.
Yeah, it's something we're very careful about, because that does put stigma does put a lot of people off. They think if they contact a service like ours, they'll be labelled as mentally ill and it'll follow them throughout their lives. The only people we'll ever tell about someone coming to see us is their GP, and we would often say to people, if they're a bit worried about even their GP knowing, then they can control the amount of information we give to their GP. All we let the GP know is they're in touch with us and we're providing some type of therapy. And everything that people talk about with us stays with us. It's something we're very, very careful about. And lots of organisations who provide this type of work are all very careful about stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think one of the things about it's the reason that the stigma is such an issue. If you are the 1 in 4 or the 1 in 3 that are there, and you think, well, I don't want to pick up that phone because then I'll become part of those statistics and I'll be labelled as mentally. The issue is, if you've got those feelings, you're already in that category. You're already the 1 in 4 or the 1 in 3. You're already in that category, and actually, what the stigma is doing is stopping you getting out of those numbers, of solving the problems that you've got in your life, which is why the stigma is something which we always need to be tackling and tackling head on.
Exactly, and this the type of disorders we treat, depression and anxiety, are often referred to as a common cold of mental health problems, in that most people get them at some point in their lives. And the one of the big areas that we're looking to expand in is young men. The figures would tell us that women are twice as likely to be depressed as men, but that's not actually the case. Women are twice as likely to ask for help with depression than men. One of the problems that young men face is this stigma, and they don't want to be reaching out to a psychological therapy service or be in therapy or however they might think of it. And what they tend to do is try and manage themselves. And some of the things they use to manage this is alcohol, drugs, to help manage the even low-level anxiety and depression. And men are 3 times more likely to develop alcohol problems than women, and that's probably the reason, is that when men feel down, they tend to want a fix. Men are problem solvers and fixers. They like a problem solving approach to things, whereas women are more comfortable talking about their emotions. So one of the things we're trying to do is reach out to men, for them to come forward to us and access services.
Just tell me about anxiety. If anyone's sort of gone through issues of anxiety, they'll know exactly how it feels. But for maybe those who haven't experienced it yet, when people describe their anxiety to you, what sort of things does that sound like? Yeah,
there's lots of different types of anxiety that people come with. A very common one is that people feel uncomfortable around other people. So, for example, when they're out and in social groupings or at work or just being out and about, they worry that people might be judging them. And this is nowhere near paranoia or any of those labels that people stick and stuff. It's just people that feel a bit uncomfortable, don't know what to say in certain social situations, and then start to focus on themselves and worry about how they're coming across, and the problem tends to spiral. Another common one is people experiencing panic attacks. I would imagine that most people on this planet have had a panic attack at some point in their lives, and that's usually characterised by a crushing sensation in the chest, accompanied by fast breathing and dizziness and things like that. And what happens is people then become fearful of having another one of those attacks, and they do things like avoid certain situations for fear of that. And what it does is it attacks their confidence to deal with things. And the main theme in any anxiety disorder is people overestimating the threat that they're under and underestimating their ability to cope with that threat. So they see the world as more threatening than it actually is, and don't appreciate the skills that they have to deal with that threat.
I sometimes think that anxiety is the ultimate example of when people do the whole pull yourself together routine, because as you say there, it's that perceived sense of threat or lack of threat, or it's a social environment and no one's judging you. But for some people, that anxiety, I guess, can lead on to many different things, because if you have that feeling once, twice, if you always have that feeling, that's why maybe anxiety and depression are bedfellows. Stress obviously gets thrown into that as well, that actually having those feelings once or twice, not necessarily a problem, but ongoing, and having that as an ongoing issue in your life would then add to other potential issues.
Yeah. The thing about anxiety problems is they can become crippling. They really can affect people, the way people manage their world. We know for a fact that lots of people, if they have an anxiety problem that's left untreated, can start to withdraw from the world completely. And we do have people who are afraid to leave their own homes, afraid to leave their houses for fear of the anxiety rather than for fear of anything else. So it really can be quite crippling. And those people who have those very in-depth problems aren't different to the people who have mild problems. They're just problems that haven't been addressed, and the anxiety started to take hold. We often say to people, if anxiety had its way, it wouldn't let you out of the house again. That would keep you in the house and keep you feeding it. And one of the ways in which we help people with therapies is very gently and gradually push them out of their comfort zone and have them expose themselves to things that they feel a wee bit anxious about, feel comfortable with that, and then move on to something else.
Depression can be, I think, a slightly different beast in that if anyone goes through it, first and foremost, they sometimes just think, well, this is just what this is just how I feel about life. And it's often, I think, when people get the label of depression, that can almost be helpful because it suddenly goes, there's a reason I feel like this, and it's because depression. Your experience of depression, I guess, must be different, but the themes, once again, must come through time and time again in terms of how people feel and how people feel about themselves.
Yeah. As you say, it's perfectly normal to feel down. Sometimes it's perfectly normal to lose interest or pleasure in things sometimes. But if that starts, we say if that lasts longer than 2 weeks, then it's something that's fixable and something that we might want to help with. People who feel depressed get into that type of pattern, that they feel down, feel like they've nothing to offer the world, so they lock themselves away from the world. And that's okay for a day or so to recharge your batteries. But if that becomes the pattern, then people can get locked into that depression. And these are symptoms that are, as I say, are perfectly normal in small doses for a few days or a week or even. And quite often, lots of people get these symptoms during the winter. So we're coming up to the clocks changing at the end of October. And lots of people struggle with that. We like daylight, it's good for us. And people end up during the winter being deprived of things like vitamin D, and we notice more people feeling down, and that's perfectly normal. But if it lasts more than a couple of weeks, it's something you might want some help with.
And in terms of when people come to you in regard to depression, do they talk about it coming from a particular point, or can it be that, because sometimes grief and things like that can lead into issues, something we've talked about on this programme. But there'll be a lot of people, I guess, who just feel a certain way and think that that's just how they feel about themselves and the world around them, that they don't get particularly high, and that they feel this malaise about things, or they can't understand why people are getting excited about something because their reaction to it is very different. Lots of people live with depression and don't know that they're depressed. It's also very common in people who have long-term physical health problems, so things like diabetes. People with diabetes are twice as likely to be depressed as everyone else, and the problem is that they see that as part of their physical illness, that of course I'm depressed, I've got diabetes, or I've got lots of these physical health problems, when really it's something discreet and treatable, it's something separate. And also, yes, you have people who put up with depression for quite some time, thinking that that's just their personality. And it's true that we all have us as a society. Thankfully, we have a range of personalities. Some people are very extroverted and outgoing and live on adrenaline. Other people are more reflective and live inside their own heads, and that's perfectly okay. But when it stops you from doing the things you might want to be doing, that's when it becomes a problem. So we often say if how you're feeling stops you from doing things like taking care of yourself, looking after yourself, going to work, or engaging in the things you want to be engaging in, then it's depression. It's not your personality. And a good reason to pick up the phone and get in contact with you. In terms of making contact with Talk Liverpool, what's the best way of people to do it? Because I'm sure there's going to be many people listening to this conversation thinking, actually, that sounds a little bit like me. Paul seems to be touching on something that I understand. Where can people go, and what can people do to make sure that they get in contact with you? Yeah,
there's two things they can do. They could Google Talk Liverpool and refer themselves on our website. So lots of people with anxiety problems don't like picking up the phone. They prefer maybe doing stuff online, and if that's their way, we can actually, as I said earlier, we can make their therapy online, so they don't have to come in and talk to somebody in a clinic, or they can phone us. If they phone 0151 228 2300, sorry, so that's 0151 228 2300. They can refer themselves online, or they can refer themselves to our service. In that appointment, no one will ask them lots of questions about their mental health and stuff like that. They'll basically just book them in for appointment. We'll make sure that they're in the right place. They've got a GP that can support them, and we'll book them in for a call with one of our therapists.
Okay, so that's 0151 228 2300, or just Google Talk Liverpool, and you'll get all the information that you're looking for as well. They deal with up to 1,000 people a month, but you've got room, you've got capacity. This is one of the things that we're often talk about, that people sometimes feel from a mental health services point of view or an emotional health services point of view that they're full already, they're going to have to be on waiting list. But actually, one of the things at Talk Liverpool is getting somebody, speaking to somebody within a matter of days.
Yeah, most definitely, because we know that the quicker we start the therapy, the more successful it's going to be. So you'll get to talk to someone within a few days, and also we've lots of ranges, lots of types of therapy available very quickly.
Thank you for your time today, Paul. Anything else you want to give a mention to in terms of the work that you do, or just maybe to encourage people to?
Yeah, But one thing I would say is it's World Mental Health Day this week, and there's lots of events going on across Liverpool this week just to bring mental health to the fore. There's a mental health festival going on, and what we'd really want to encourage people is, even if you're not going to contact us and talk to someone, whether it be a friend, a colleague, and if you see someone who you think is depressed, let them know that it's okay to talk to them. Let them know you're available to talk, because I think talking to anyone, talking to professionals is great, but talking to anybody about it starts to dispel all the stigma and the myths, and people can off. For example, at the courses we run, lots of the people who attend the courses say, well, it wasn't anything that the person teaching the course taught us. It was the guy I was sitting next to who gave me some really good tips on how he manages his mood.
Yeah.
So talk to each other if you're not going to.
But
talk
it's that
to
thing, isn't it, as
professionals.
well? Like in physical health, people go, "Oh, my knee's been playing up," and you go, "You know what? I know a great physio.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure he'll squeeze you in for 5 minutes." You know, they have that thing, but actually that's the thing, and the reason why hopefully people who are listening to the show who this isn't affecting soak up the information, so that if somebody does talk to them about it, they might then go, "Well, have you heard about that Talk Liverpool thing?"
Yeah, exactly.
And then they might be able to make the connection that way. I'll give that number again, 0151228 2300, Talk Liverpool. If you Google it, you'll get Talk Liverpool, and then obviously we're called Radio City Talk in Liverpool, so we appear somewhere on that list as well. So nice little correlation there between the two. Talk Liverpool, and Paul Campbell, who is a consultant clinical psychologist, and our guest today on the programme. Thank you for your time, Paul. Really appreciate you joining us.
Mental Health Monday
On Radio City Talk,
with Mick Coyle.
tackling the stigma.
Radio City Talk.
Okay, it's Radio City Talk. My name's Mick Coyle. I hope you're well. Each and every year, we always catch up with the organisers of the Liverpool Mental Health Festival. It's back for 2018. I'm very pleased to say we've got the Development and Opportunities Lead for Liverpool Health Mental Health Consortium, Claire Stevens, in the studio. Claire, great to see you.
Great to see you too. Thanks for
Hey, you're
having us.
back again. I tell you what, you're going to be doing your 10th anniversary event soon.
Well, that'll be nice.
In terms of just the event that you've been running since 2010 now, I think you've been totting up how many conversations that you think you might have sparked, the number of organisations that you've worked in and with, the number of events that you've got. The numbers are phenomenal, aren't they?
Yeah, we're into this tens of thousands of conversations that we've had with people over the years. I think it's 33,000 conversations that we reckon we've had, which we've sort of totted up on our little clickers over the last decade or so. Yeah,
That's incredible. Each and every year there's a little bit of a theme. Obviously, mental health is the main theme. What are you going for this year? What's the theme for 2018?
this year it's really all about the arts and creativity specifically. We found that that's a really good way to engage people, and that people like to get involved in having a go at singing, dancing, doing some art, reading some poetry, doing some creative writing of their own, as well as coming along to see local acts performing. So that's what we're theming it around, I guess, this year.
Yeah, and I think having that, that's, I guess, for a lot of people, what mindfulness, looks like. When people talk about positive mental health, what does it look like? It looks like people engaged in music, people doing artwork, painting. Anyone who saw the Giants at the weekend will know that sometimes an art event can leave you feeling like $1 million, like you're walking as one of the Giants.
Walking
as well.
tall,
Yeah,
like a giant.
Absolutely, but actually, what a great example of it, that how you can then turn that into something which can be positive for people's mental health.
Definitely, and I think it's a way of bringing people together, because one of the big issues that people face is isolation. So it gets people out and doing stuff. Having a go at something is good for you, and also we do it in an environment where people aren't being judged, and that's really important too, because it's people like you and me having a go at something. We may not be experts, but it's fun.
Well, let's just mention some of the destinations that people can head to for this one as well. Some of the event spaces that you've got, because these are all mainstream buildings. They're not tucked away. They're not hidden out of town. These are all mainstream buildings that everybody knows: the Philharmonic Hall, Fact at Wood Street, the Blue Coat, Constellations as well, which is always busy. The Museum of Liverpool's involved as well. The Brink in Liverpool. So these are mainstream buildings as well, and loads of people can get involved there.
Yeah, absolutely. We want them to be sort of easy to access, and of course all the events are free as well. So that's another really important.
Give us a sense of how you're kicking things off.
Okay, so on Wednesday evening we've got an opening night event, which is at the music room at the Philharmonic. and that is sort of in partnership with a lot of the other Liverpool festivals that we work with over the course of the year. So everyone's providing an act as part of that. So we've got a Congolese band that we're bringing in association with Africa OEA. Liverpool Pride we work with this year. Sort of suggested that we get Barbara Brownskirt, the poet. We've been doing some work with Writing on the Wall and Marjorie Morgan, the tutor, who has worked with a group of trans people to do some creative writing, and they're going to be reading from their work, which is really exciting. Liverpool Irish Festival are contributing through providing some Irish music and dancers, and we've got Nakdar Sansar Indian dancers and Bhangra act that we're doing with Milap Fest, and so on and so forth.
Brilliant.
So that's going to be a fantastic night, and we've got the amazing David Hoyle comparing that for us.
And all the while we've been talking about those events taking place, we've always mentioned that you guys have often been involved with sort of separate events or events as part of those events as well. So I guess now it's kind of like an all-you-can-eat buffet of all those different festivals coming together.
Absolutely, yeah. And we're really excited about it, having everybody working together. And by working with those festivals, it means we've accessed the communities who naturally gravitate to those festivals and being able to have those conversations that we were talking about with them over the course of the year. And the information that we've gleaned from all the people that we've spoken to over the year and that we'll speak to over this coming week is feeding into research. Then we're working with colleagues at the University of Liverpool and John Moores University.
So there are events taking place Wednesday night, then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday as well. You got a film night at Fact at Wood Street, popular building. What's going on there?
Okay, we've got a couple of short films, a few short films made by local people beforehand, including something that Liverpool Football Club have done. All with a mental health theme, of course. We've got the film Adult Life Skills, which will be showing as our main feature, which stars Jodie Whittaker, who just debuted as Doctor Who this week. That'll be exciting. And, it's a chance again to come together, watch some stuff about mental health and maybe get people talking.
Yeah, absolutely. We mentioned the conversations that you've had as a result of that. When people are getting involved in the workshops or they're seeing the event, how does that then mental health conversation take place within those environments?
Well, it depends on the environment that we're in, obviously. I mean, a really good opportunity to come down and have a chat with us will be Feel Good Friday at the Blue Coat, which is happening all day on Friday this week, because we've got free workshops so people can have a go at things like yoga, singing, Bhangra dancing, learning a bit of magic skills, doing some street theatre, doing some capoeira, all kinds going on there. But also there's going to be information stalls run by a lot of local support organisations. So there'll be a chance to engage with those people, find out a bit more about where you can get support and help. But also we'll be there as staff members with volunteers to have a chat with people, ask them a few questions about their well-being and what it is that they need from support and what it is that they find useful to them. And those sort of things get then fed into the local authority and the health service and suggestions made as to how we can best support people.
And there's loads of stuff, different things happening involving different people, different types of people as well. I'm just looking at the Baby Book Club at 10 o'clock in the morning. That'll be popular. The Mersey Bells, Tom Moorcroft, the Strumbellas involved as well, who are an awesome ukulele.
I think they might have been on your show before.
They are. It's always good to give familiar mentions, familiar names, a little bit of a mention. There is a booklet actually where people can find out more information. Where can people get hold of them? Because actually people can pick and choose once they see what's going on.
Yeah, they're around. I think at all the venues that we've got stuff happening at. But you can also get it online. So that's www.liverpoolmentalhealth.org and look for the festival brochure. I think it's on the front page, but there's also a link to the festival from the front page.
Liverpoolmentalhealth.org if you want to find out more information about some of the events as well. There's literally too many things to mention going on, so it's brilliant that 1,000,001 different things for people to get involved in as well. But when you're there, it'll be very much a dedicated event for that particular moment at some of those great destinations as well. What are you really looking forward to, Claire? I mean, I don't want you to pick something out as a favourite, but what are you particularly expect to stand out?
I think it'll be nice to be doing something at the Blue Coat, as I've just mentioned. It's a new venue for us and a nice place to visit for people. As you say, there's loads going on throughout that day. I'm also looking forward to the Articipation event on the Saturday at Constellations, which has been definitely informed by the conversations we've been having with people this year, with people in the arts and creative industries, about how difficult it can be to work in those industries. In particular, often you're a kind of lone worker, and having to manage yourself and motivate yourself, and you are, as maybe a professional in the arts, subject to quite searing criticism from people, which can be difficult to take. And particularly people in the music industry or comedy or whatever are travelling around a lot, often on their own, and can be susceptible to this sort of cliched rock and roll lifestyle, if you like, which often isn't very helpful to people who are often quite sort of sensitive and creative people. So we're gonna be having a forum where we're discussing all of that with an amazing panel of poets and musicians, and performers, and the people who do the kind of admin for festivals, who often again work on their own, quite sort of
literally in the gig economy.
Literally in the gig economy, exactly that. And I think the sort of lessons that they have learned over time are the sort of lessons that a lot of the rest of us are learning now, as that becomes a more commonplace sort of work style or methodology, if you like. So that's going to be a really, really interesting day. We've got some great conversations I think we're going to have with people there about how we can support people in those industries. And I think there's lessons to learn beyond that. And in the evening, there's a free gig, again, at Constellations.
And that's Constellations on the Saturday.
Yes.
Brilliant stuff. We'll give that one a mention a little bit closer to the time as well. Just mention Spirit of Shankly, Liverpool Football Supporters Union. They're involved, as are Liverpool Football Club across the festival. Just tell us what Spirit of Shankly are up to.
Well, I think they're also going to come in and talk to you at some point, aren't they? They've been really good helping us out, trying to raise awareness about suicide, particularly with young men, and more widely, but particularly people who are football supporters. As we know, that's a demographic who's not always very, who necessarily finds it very easy to talk about how they're feeling. It's okay to go to the match and scream and shout and cry and laugh and those sorts of things. But beyond that, it can be quite difficult to let your feelings out sometimes. So they're doing some great work trying to raise those issues and get men in particular talking about how they're feeling and going to seek the appropriate help. Loads
of events taking place running from the 10th through to the 14th. That's Wednesday night through Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. After that, Claire, you can have some sleep. But apart from that, you're going to be very busy. Thank you for coming into the studio. Always a pleasure to see you.
You're
If people
welcome.
want to find out more information, liverpoolmentalhealth.org. Plus, if you go to any of those destinations that we've mentioned, any of those venues, Philharmonic, Fact, Blue Coat, Constellations, Museum of Liverpool, I'm forgetting a few, The Brink, and a couple of others, they'll all got the
Central Library,
program.
I think, have some as well.
Brilliant stuff, and you can get the programme there. There's loads in there. I do urge you to check it out as well. Loads of different things, depending on which day of the week you're able to head down. If you can do multiple days, absolutely brilliant. Claire Stevens, thank you for your time from the Liverpool Mental Health Consortium and joining us on the programme today.
Thank you.
Mental Health Monday with Mick Coyle.
On Radio City Talk.